Nevada, the blistering furnace at the heart of America, doesn't just drain the life out of every plant, it tests human patience itself, rejecting nearly every greening method farmers have tried for decades. And then, just when every solution had collapsed into dead ends, a bizarre idea emerged. An idea the entire agricultural community mocked as insane, impossible, even delusional, releasing millions of bees into the desert. No hives, no honey, no wooden frames or protective nets. Just tiny, natural engineers evolved to burrow into alkaline soil and awaken flowers that honeybees would never dare to touch. Within only a few weeks, what sounded like a joke turned into a stunning breakthrough. The barren fields began to change in ways no one could have predicted. And this story, the transformation of a stubborn landscape into a place bursting with life, wasn't luck, it was design. Join Terran Works as we uncover how these tiny bees rewrote the future of Nevada. Let's begin. Before the truckloads of bees rolled into the desert, Nevada was a riddle without an answer. The sun baked the ground into a hardened crust. Ancient lake minerals spread across the soil like a thin, stubborn armor, and the entire region behaved like a worn-out machine. Year after year, yields slipped away quietly, like grains of sand sliding through a hand, a warning that this land was no longer willing to walk alongside agriculture. And yet, within all that harshness, one plant refused to give up. Alfalfa, that muted violet-green crop, soft yet resilient, pushed its roots deep where other plants surrendered, reaching hidden water veins that only it seemed able to unlock. And if pollinated correctly, alfalfa could do something extraordinary. Not just survive, but produce tiny seeds valuable enough to reshape the fate of an entire farm. Those seeds helped the soil retain moisture, slowing the desert's advance, as if adding a new rhythm of breath to a place where only hot winds seemed to exist. But the problem lay in the plant's own delicacy. Alfalfa flowers don't open easily. Each blossom is a miniature slingshot, concealed beneath its petals, that snaps open only under the right weight, the right force, at the right moment. Most bee species cannot tolerate that sudden pop. Honeybees, hardworking as they are, avoid the discomfort. Smaller bees simply aren't strong enough to activate the mechanism. The result? Fields of purple in full bloom, beautiful but useless, like a performance with no audience. Farmers counted flowers more than seeds, and each light, half-empty bag of seed became another reminder of the land's stubbornness. By 2023, everything had reached its breaking point. Nevada's soil grew more alkaline each year, crops weakened, and production costs rose to unbelievable levels. Modern agricultural solutions that worked elsewhere fell apart when applied to Nevada's uniquely challenging ground. And the cruelest irony was this. The only bee species capable of triggering alfalfa's bloom mechanism, mentioned in a few faded lines of old research notes, had nearly vanished from the wild, swept away by chemicals and human disruption. Nevada had become a door locked from the inside, and what no one realized was that the key to opening it had been lying right beneath their feet all along, hidden in the very salty soil that most farmers dismissed, the alkali bee, a solution many had once scoffed at as foolish. In the long, weary months when Nevada's farmers believed they had tried everything possible, an unexpected discovery emerged from a place no one had ever thought to look. An old university storage room, where stacks of research papers sat frozen in dust as if time had erased their value. But when Dr. Clara Martinez turned to a yellowed page, she froze. There, buried within the vague scribbles of the 1970s, was a reference to a strange species of bee that once lived on this very land. A bee most modern people had never seen or even heard of. This bee didn't make honey, didn't build wooden hives, didn't gather into colonies like honeybees. Instead, it lived underground, carving tiny tunnels through the alkaline soil that humans had long considered the enemy of agriculture. And what astonished researchers back then was this: its size, its weight, and even its landing behavior matched the alfalfa flower's tiny slingshot mechanism with eerie perfection. No other bee species could do that, only this one. But according to the notes, the population of this bee collapsed rapidly when Nevada began using harsh chemicals in the latter half of the 20th century. The The soil was disturbed, their tunnels caved in, their food sources vanished, and the bees vanished with them. Dr. Clara sat in silence for several minutes. If a bee had once evolved to pollinate alfalfa, if it had once lived right here in Nevada, then the answer to the crisis had never been far away. It had been beneath everyone's feet, quite literally, for decades. The only question left was, could it come back? And could a tiny bee, erased from human memory, be the key to unlocking a door Nevada had been pushing against for so long without a single inch of movement? When the discovery of the bee species was brought to the meeting table, no one in the research team dared to say it aloud. Yet everyone felt the same thing. If alfalfa needed that exact key to set seed, and if the bee that once performed that role had vanished simply because humans altered the soil the wrong way, then the only way to save the harvest was to recreate, precisely, the environment nature had once designed for them. That meant doing something every Nevada farmer considered a contradiction. Not reducing soil salinity, but deliberately making it saltier, just the way the alkali bee had once chosen it as home. This triggered a chain of bizarre requirements. The soil had to be loose enough for bees to dig tunnels, yet firm enough for those tunnels not to collapse. The moisture level below needed to remain stable without flooding the surface. Salt had to be spread at the exact concentration that discouraged other insects, but preserved the ideal conditions for the bees. And the entire soil structure had to be prepared before a single bee was released. From the outside, the plan looked like an expensive joke, turning a corner of the farm into a white, salt-crusted patch like a miniature salt flat, burying beneath it an intricate underground irrigation network worth tens of thousands of dollars, then dumping millions of bees onto it as if sowing the most reckless crop ever planted. Experts called it reckless. Many farmers saw it as proof that science had gone too far. Local newspapers labeled it the strangest experiment of the year. But for those who truly understood alfalfa, the logic was almost beautiful. If you want to restore a missing link in an ecosystem, sometimes you must return the environment to exactly where it once stood. If you want the alkali bee to come back, you must first rebuild the home it was forced to abandon. And so, under the Nevada desert sun, a patch of gleaming white salt soil began to take shape, not as a symbol of desperation, but as an invitation to a species forgotten by time. Only one step remained: releasing the bees. A decision that could cause the entire plan to collapse, or open a new chapter for Nevada's agriculture. When the salt bed was finally completed, gleaming under the Nevada sun like a giant mirror reflecting human audacity, all that remained was to bring the bees home. On that morning, as the specialized trucks rumbled down the dirt road toward the experimental plot, far more people gathered than anyone expected, coming only to witness how this crazy experiment would fall apart. And then, the most controversial moment in Nevada's agricultural history arrived. Millions of alkali bees were poured onto the salted soil, as if someone had just released a rain of life onto a barren desert. No wooden hives, no frames, no proper apiary, just salt earth, blistering sunlight, and a fragile hope that nature would recognize its home. The scene exploded across social media. Videos of workers tilting crates, tiny black specks cascading to the ground like sand, spread rapidly throughout the agricultural community. People laughed, mocked, and sneered, some even feeling second-hand embarrassment for the bees themselves. Experts appeared on television, insisting the insects wouldn't survive more than a few days. Newspapers ran dramatic headlines calling it a step backward for modern agriculture. Many viewers simply concluded that Nevada had lost its mind. But amid the storm of criticism, a small group stood still, strangely calm. The people who understood alfalfa better than anyone, and who knew that to judge this plan, all the ridicule in the world meant nothing until news came from beneath the soil. Because every answer, success or collapse, lay hidden where no one could see, in tiny tunnels that might already be forming, or might never appear at all. And Nevada had no choice but to wait, to see whether this bold gamble would become the final punchline, or proof that sometimes, what the whole world rejects turns out to be the strongest solution of all. In the first days after the bees were released, the surface of the salt field showed almost no sign that the bold plan was working. But beneath that soil, an entirely different story was quietly unfolding. In the slightly humid darkness below the surface, the alkali bees began doing what they had evolved over thousands of years to do. They dug. Not the random chaotic digging of other ground-nesting bees, but precise, arc-shaped burrows that formed near-perfect circular tunnels, each with almost identical depth and width. From those tunnels, they carved out tiny brood chambers lined with pollen and nutrient-rich secretions, then placed their first eggs inside, seeds of life no one above ground knew existed. What was even more astonishing was how they chose their spots. Guided by soil compaction, the scent of minerals, and the faint moisture rising from the underground irrigation system, they pinpointed exactly where conditions were ideal, as if reading a map humans had never seen. And the salt crust on top, the very thing everyone assumed would hinder them, became a natural shield, keeping other insects out while locking in just the right amount of moisture for the larvae to develop. Each passing day, another tunnel extended, another brood chamber was completed, another sign that the bees everyone thought extinct were returning to life in the middle of the desert. Above the ground, farmers observed in silence, afraid to admit they were hopeful, yet unable to deny the sense that something was stirring beneath their feet. Nevada couldn't see it, but under that salt-white soil, a hidden city was being built. A city that could change the future of this land. And with just a little more time, the silence underground would rise into an answer so loud that every mockery made earlier would suddenly feel very small. A few weeks after the underground bee city had quietly taken shape beneath the salt-crusted soil, the first signs of change began to appear. Not from the soil itself, but from the long, purple fields stretching hundreds of meters away. At first, farmers noticed only something subtle. The number of bees hovering over the alfalfa blooms seemed higher than in any previous year. So high it felt as if someone had opened an invisible gate and let them pour in. But it wasn't until they knelt down and looked closely at each blossom that they realized something that shattered every old assumption. The alkali bees weren't merely visiting the flowers like ordinary pollinators. They were landing with a sharp, precise motion. The exact weight, angle, and force needed to trigger alfalfa's signature pop mechanism with a perfection that made researchers question their earlier theories. When the flower's keel snapped upward against their chest and abdomen, dusting them with a burst of fine yellow pollen, the alkali bees didn't recoil like honeybees. They embraced it, their persistence almost instinctual. They hurled themselves from flower to flower, working without pause. From a distance, the alfalfa field seemed alive, waves of bees sweeping across the purple expanse like the land itself was breathing. And for the first time in years, people saw what Nevada's agriculture had been yearning for. Flowers, once triggered, swelling and transforming into pods, promising new seeds within. The scientists fell silent. The pollination rate of the alkali bees surpassed every species ever used. Their foraging range was larger than predicted. Their efficiency was nearly flawless. And as the bees continued their relentless work, the farmers realized they were witnessing more than the revival of a pollinator. They were witnessing nature's unmistakable answer, the missing link they had been searching for all along. As the early summer winds swept across the alfalfa fields, carrying a thick, sweet scent, Nevada's farmers stepped into the decisive moment. Seed harvest season. Normally, this was a time filled with worry, but that year, an indescribable silence settled over the farm, the silence of people sensing that something unusual was approaching. And then the first seed bags were lifted. Immediately, whispers spread along the row of harvesting machines. The seeds were more abundant, denser. When the numbers were compiled, the entire research team was stunned. Yields were 3, even 4 times the state's long-term average. Some areas reached figures experts had long claimed were impossible for Nevada's climate. Nevada was once the symbol of nature's stubbornness, yet it was this very place, seemingly hopeless, that proved how the smallest solutions can create the greatest transformations. From the tiny tunnels beneath the salty soil, the alkali bees rewrote the future of an entire region. Not through miracles, but through abilities humans had long forgotten. And Nevada, thanks to those millions of delicate wings, learned how to bloom again. If you want to follow more unbelievable stories from modern agriculture, don't forget to subscribe to Terran Works so you won't miss any of these extraordinary journeys.